Thanks for the invitation. This is becomes a bit more particular about how you might go about managing a quiz. I'm not going to say anything particular about my route, how I got here, although I would emphasise what Becky Allen said first thing, that there is what is the conventional path. So I did a maths and German undergraduate degree. Here I am talking to a group of early career ecologists as the early career representative on the British Ecological Society Council. This is, just go with it, seize opportunities, say yes all the time. You can do attitude, the most important thing. So with that positivity in mind, the first thing I'm going to say about using social media to manage and develop your career is that Facebook is rubbish. So what you are doing here today is you are being young, you're being dynamic, you're being go-getting, you're out there, you are getting skills into you that will enable you to be more competitive in the marketplace. And what Facebook does is it puts a wall up, you've got to log in, it then keeps all the data to itself, so you can't study the stuff on the data, the interaction data on Facebook, unless you have access to it. The company keeps that. It's great if you have an established network and you're doing something like a Google Hangout, or you can do some on LinkedIn as well. It's great if you've got that network already. Foster that, have discussions, keep things within. But in terms of broadcasting to people, closed barriers, passwords are not good things to do. And so the key point, I think, is that these different channels, different ways of doing stuff, have different purposes. In the Arab Spring, the organisers produced a Facebook group to make their plans for where the meetings would be. So small select group, they didn't want to get them very far. Decide that in a Facebook group and advertise it via Twitter so that it's free, it's public available, it's out there, everyone can see it, and then they broadcasted it to the world using YouTube. So many opportunities now. Echo that. Used to be a stage where if you didn't have access to the Library of Cambridge or wherever, you couldn't do ecology because you didn't have access to all these journals. We really don't have that problem now. It's a much more democratic system. There's more competition, but there are more opportunities. Let's focus on that. Different ways to promote yourself. I was asked to talk about LinkedIn, and I've got a LinkedIn account, and I didn't know a lot about it. So I had this example of how you can find things out without having the insider knowledge. I just asked some people, and so I asked what LinkedIn was. Phil Martin, who wrote the Beard Bulletin piece on how to use Twitter, said it's fine as an online CV, but I've never been contacted by anyone through it regarding work. Luca Borga agreed, he said the same for me. Asi Johannesson, who's third year undergraduate at Leeds, said nope, I don't get it. Would a hiring committee really bother with my LinkedIn profile? Would adding them to my contacts help? Ross Mount, who's a PhD student and an open access Panton fellow, said it's kind of like a really static, formal department page. Quote unquote, it's for peeps who ain't on Twitter blogs. So them to contact you, so that by then I wouldn't go friending professors on LinkedIn. So an entomologist professor said I'm on it too. It keeps me in touch with ex-students and school friends, sometimes but not much else. Another recently appointed lecturer, I'm on it, that hasn't brought any benefits, is involved in the corporate world. So because everything is being done openly, someone called Chris Caesar replied, who I've never met. Even when I worked in the commercial environmental sector, peeps never really used LinkedIn for anything more than a contact list. So this kind of routinely negative, or at least suboptimal experiences of using LinkedIn. With the exception of the British Ecological Society, who's beginning to use LinkedIn to advertise jobs and poll views, as ever capturing the zeitgeist, I feel. All of these opinions were formulated by asking people on Twitter. And so there'll be links to everything that I say at the end and via my Twitter feed. And what we're going to talk about for the remaining 20 minutes is Twitter and blogging, because this is an outward projection of you. Think about that LinkedIn, it's kind of like a really, what's the quote? It's a really static, old-fashioned, formal page. We're not static, we're young, we're dynamic, we're going to get jobs, we're going to change the world, we're going to make things better. And Twitter, particularly if you can tie it in some kind of blogging profile, which allows you to move beyond the restrictions of the 140 character limit, is a real positive way, publicly available in every sense of, one, staying up to date with the latest news, two, raising your profile in your field, and importantly, facilitate face-to-face proper networking. This is when you are at conferences and this is real people having real interactions, as there will be between 5 and 7 next door. So, 1 in 40, this is about 18 months old now, this is 1 in 40 scholars are active on Twitter, which doesn't sound like a lot. Think of all those people who run labs with jobs, and the number is going up very rapidly, starting with 2007. So this is a growing area as people, in part, respond to the little F and T buttons that you see all over websites, but also just this awareness that you can advertise jobs through Twitter, you can solicit opinions through Twitter, you can inform yourself about stuff that you know nothing about by Twitter. People genuinely want to help. If you are something and people know about it, they will be happy to help you. It makes them look good. It's this idea of being altruistic. Sharing is a good thing. And if it's all public, it's easier to do that. So, the basics, and I apologise to people who use Twitter already. The timeline is the core of it. It can act as your personal newsfeed, comparing tweets and all the individuals that you follow. And so you can split this into a work and non-work profile or lists. For the purposes of demonstration, everything's here together. So this was the day that the placental mammals phylogeny came out in Nature. Was that 10 days ago? So kind of tied all the way through, there is discussions on the mythology of placental mammals and how you could mythologize from that, along with some stuff about the Eastleigh by-election, which happens to be where I might be moving house, and I would urge politicians to commit perjury before moving house, because it's a really easy way of finding out information about the constituency you want to move in. All the stuff about bypasses and housing developments and gravel pits, it's all as well as sports comments. You can though group this more logically, and hashtags are the easiest and the most obvious way of doing this. You can search without hashtags, but hashtags group stuff together. So this is all the stuff the same day about ecology. You'll like what people have done here with their handle name of the unbelievable health, what bees can do for you. And then just the final point is that unlike Facebook, followers don't mean that you are following them. You can have an asymmetric relationship in the people who hang on your every word and the people whose every word you hang on. And so it acts in both ways. If you both follow each other, then you get to see all these replies going through. If you don't, and you're following just an automated news feed, and that comes into you. It's a very flexible medium for interacting. You can use it either just to receive information or to send and transmit. An example of transmitting would be Ross Matz, who, one of the people on the LinkedIn thing, he is the early representative on the Systematics Association Council. So he's an open access a file, and he was pointing out that every learned society, and he's badged me about this a lot in terms of BDS, should be doing 6-month Green 08 compliance. He's here claiming that Cambridge University Press have agreed to this, and compliance is easy. And so then we got into a discussion, and so this is me replying directly to him. So unlike the other stuff, which is just coming out, these can only be seen by Ross and me and the people who follow Ross and me. So it's all going out there. It's all going out there into this generation of information, but it won't appear automatically in their timelines unless they follow both of us because they like what we both have to say, or are interested in what we both have to say. And so then this continues, and then someone else who follows Ross replies to this. So it might take the blocks to the Guardian. And then, does the learned society exist for itself or for the world? And then we can reply and try and put other perspectives. It can be hard in 140 characters, but you can get across this idea that publication revenues can be used for a lot of other activities, such as sitting on undergraduate careers fairs. So even in a very limited form, and what appalled me about Twitter was the character limit, you can still have these conversations, you can still make logical arguments going forward. and I meant to say this at the start actually, apparently there's Twitter on one of these, but I haven't, no, it's on one of these ones, which is here. So someone's written make a website and get a Twitter account. One of the things they've resolved to do on the basis of Drew's second post exercise. And I think that's fantastic, because before I started using Twitter, I had it up here, I was completely closed off to it. I thought it was a waste of time and an example of the way that modern society is run. But it's not rubbish, it's brilliant. It's the best way of getting news and other things that I have encountered. If you want to find out news before the newspapers have it, Twitter is already there. Okay. Everything, though, is entirely public. So you can search. So if you happen to follow a load of people who are unsavoury or have particular types of views, then people can find out about that. And people, since we're all basically known by associations with us and the company we keep, it's not just what you say, it's the company that you keep that is entirely public. You can delete things, but as ever, the damage is often done. So this possibly shows my age, as this is an example of someone whose kind of personality of a very cool and a laid-back guy, lead singer of the fun-loving Criminals, now a Six Music DJ, was at an award ceremony, and he'd done all this shit before on Twitter and on his show. How did he care about awards? Because he just loved the music and he loved being at work. Anyway, then as the evening progresses, and most of the deleted tweets seem to come out late at night, and he got more and more drunk. This is a series of verbatim tweets that he put out to try and really prove to the world that he didn't care about winning awards at all. And yet, by the end of it, even though they're all deleted in the morning when he's waking up with his hangover, the damage is done. As soon as you press the button, it's public, and if it's memorable, someone out there has remembered it. So, there's a lot of noise, but it still sticks. You can communicate through this way. You can make relevant points. You make good and bad points. It's an amplifier. You can use it to amplify good things. You can use it to amplify bad things as well. So how do you just do the good things? How do we just get at the good aspects of this? There's a guy called John Tennant, who is a first-year PhD student at Imperial College London. He's just finished his kind of 2-month report when he sets out what he's going to do for his PhD, and he just finished and just posted it online in an open access way and tried to get comments to help him. So not just from his committees, she's reaching out to the people who follow his blog to contribute to the development of his PhD. Do they like his ideas? Opening up the PhD process. And he now blogs officially for the European Union. He started blogging during his master's project to find out what it would be like, with a blog called Fossils and Shit. Just another master's student in doing another degree in another of these high quality, or relatively high quality research institutions. So he gets out there, he gets a memorable blog name, he tweets prolifically. His blog is interesting. He writes in a really nice way, and you can see the development of his style as he's gone through time. And on the basis of this, the EU got in touch with him and said, well, we like what you're doing, how about you come and blog for us? And his blog is no longer fossilsandshit.wordpress. It's the official EU portal. You can do this and absolutely emphasise what Drew says. There's nothing stopping you. Get out there, try, learn. No one's perfect the first time that they do any of this stuff. That's what Ed Young said when he came to talk about Twitter to the BES. Just get in there, find out how it works. Make a couple of mistakes along the way. Get better. Come out the end with something that you can really talk about and it really has got you an elevated profile. It's just a master's student starting out. There's loads of ways that you can do it. This is Ross Mounts again. So he's Twitter, WordPress, Google+, YouTube, LinkedIn, a couple of other ones. All this other stuff. These are slides from his conference talks, the papers that that other people have written, that he likes, his Mendeley page and so on. We have loads of opportunities, loads of diverse media to get out there in a way that we never could before. We can use modern interwebbing to really accelerate our profile. What we need to do is get in there and try, have a go. So while you can transmit in that way, you can have discussions online, you can also facilitate proper networking at conferences. So I'm not particularly someone who go up and just say to Nigel Paul, who's just walked out the door, "Hi, I'm Tom, I love your work." I find that quite an artificial way of going about networking. But whereas Joel McLaughlin was a guy who reviewed one of our papers and wrote and said that he really liked it and he'd like to cite it, send him the revised version. And then we were both using the Joint Evolution Meeting hashtag in last summer. And we were both there, evidently. And then he just wrote to me in a very way, we should meet up and chat. So there were about 3,000 people at this meeting. It's really hard to just bump into someone like this. Whereas on Twitter, in this, or some way, it's an incredibly easy thing to do. Everything's there, collected under these hashtags, and it just follows through. You don't have to do this publicly. There's something called direct messages, which only the two of you can see. So Raphael had free drinks tickets as in his role as something for the Ecological Society of America. And so I said, "Does anyone want to meet up? I've got drink tickets," and I said, "Yes, that would be great," and drink tickets would be nice too. This guy is doing a really interesting PhD on the luminescence of alien feathers at the University of Akron in Texas. He's from Brazil originally, did his undergraduate in Brasilia. And he's a lovely man. And you have, while there is more noise, there's more students, there's more competition, there are ways to get through, to find out people and to discover new ways of working, new ideas that there weren't before. We have real nothing. We all have computers, we all have smartphones. You can do this and you can cut through what seems to be a very overwhelming challenge just by getting started. So how do you get started? Everyone, there's so many of these kind of lists of commandments for Twitter online. There'll be a link to a couple of them at the end and already. So I won't work through them all the way through, but just an example of a couple of ways in which this community is kind of really self-supporting. So this hash I can house PDF, the idea that you don't have online access to a particular journal article. You just tweet the abstract of the article with this hashtag on the end, and within, I haven't seen any statistics, so let's just make up a number on the ones that I see. Within a couple of minutes, someone has replied to you with the PDF that you want. There's so many people following this hashtag. You've got a couple of hundred people who follow you. It's disseminated incredibly quickly. You can get information. You can use it as a news gathering resource. I thought about this earlier this morning. There was a story in Forbes magazine about the most stressful job in the world being a university, or the least stressful job in the world being a university professor, which caused, which engendered a Twitter storm, as the phrase goes, under the hashtag #RealForbesProfessor, in which a load of professors really said what their actual working days were like. I recommend that off the back of all the talk of long hours, but flexibility that were mentioned this morning. And finally, Overly Honest Methods, which is a collection of people tweeting about kind of getting into the underbelly in science, if you will. So these were people who the first tweets from, I can't remember. Stuff like we incubated the medium for 4 days rather than 40 hours because the undergraduate left it in the fridge. And bear interactions were reduced later in the season because one of the bears died. It can be an incredibly serious, great way of doing it. But the key, I think, to using social media for a work role, it has to be imbibed with personality. If this is more than just a static, this is more than just a static series of conversation. You've got to get yourself across. All these online channels are means for you personally to advance your career. And that means you personally, at some point, have to be in a room doing interviews, and it has to help to that. You can't just shrink down behind your computer and just crash stuff out. It's a tool to facilitate getting out into the real world. And there are concerns, as Mark Twain famously mentioned. But as with anything, if you're amplifying the good and the bad, so make sure that you're doing more of the good and don't get abusive, don't talk about yourself too much. Because I kind of imagine that this is, you're at a party and there's someone who's just talking about themselves. Pretty quickly that they become very boring. Just banging on about one idea. And so for all of I love Lost Mounts, his incessive or his excessive and exclusive bleating about open access really gets on my nerve. There's a lot more to the world. And try and reduce the kind of nonsense noise. There's so much noise on Twitter anyway. But if you spend your entire time drinking my first, second, third, fourth latte, lols, then you're going to turn people off. It has to be personality, but it has to have a degree of gravity too, because this is you, this is your outward-facing world. Everything is public. And so Charlie Brooker also had pitfalls to avoid, and I think this one is great. And Tom Webb blogged about it with relation to the 100 fish left in the North Sea statistic that came out, scientific study. And so it's a press release based on that. What was it? A few months back, and it's kind of classic headline tabloid. 100 cod left in the North Sea. If you think about it for half a second, you know that's utter nonsense. And yet it becomes a kind of Twitter thing and gets blown around in a massive echo chamber, retweeted by various environmental agencies, conservation agencies, because they want to show how concerned they are. But Twitter's very good at headline statistics. It's not very good at reasoned debate underpinning it. And so don't form the mob. Don't form a mob on the basis of anything you said less than a minute ago. Think about it. So it's officially a form of microblogging. It should be making your mind work. It shouldn't just be a retweet thing. Most succinctly, be a dick. It's like life. Right? If you're like that in real life, no one will want to spend time with you. No one will be with you. Don't be like that online. This is kind of thanks slide breaks one of the golden rules of presentation, which is not to end with acknowledgement. You should end with your big kind of take-home message. But this is my big take-home message. Be nice to them. If people tweet you, then tweet them back. Engage them in conversation. Facilitate the network process. Be the kind of person, or try to be, that people will want to spend time with. All these links are on my Twitter feed, which is there. That's the link if you're not on Twitter. If you're on Twitter, at Tom Ezard, all the links that I mentioned to start, including a couple of blogs that might be relevant to the BES runs an Unlocking Your Potential event at the annual meeting each year. And these are just a couple of wraps of what people said there. These kind of key ideas, the flexibility to seize opportunity. That's emerged at both of them. So you might find those kind of them useful. And if you'd like to write something similar for Intercol 2013, which is the International Ecology Conference, then please get in touch. It's great to have a load of diverse voices for that. And if you would like to be a student volunteer at Intercol, which means free registration, £10 a day to go to events, and half of the conference free as a proper conference attendee, then also please get in touch by either of these channels, because I'm coordinating volunteers for that. It's great to have as many of you either there or contributing